Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Fantasy Football Funhouse podcast. I am Kevin Cotillo. Steve Marcus is here. What's up,
Yeah.
Steve?
What's up, Kevin? It's
We
just
are
us.
we are without Sal Lito.
No. Evidently, there was a fanball convention in Dallas this weekend. A podcast, a live podcast tomorrow night, maybe, that he was invited to. He told us that that's why he was going to Dallas, and he is not here tonight.
He is not here tonight. He is traveling to Dallas this evening. He's on a plane currently as we speak. He's got better things to do now. It's really, we knew this day was coming.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I don't blame him by any means.
No, we're not entertaining or fun. We appreciate you listening and clicking on our podcast, though. Anyway, for those of you who thought that Sal was going to be on the show and you only tune in for him, feel free to turn us off now.
That's right.
We already got your click. We already got your money. So that's really all there is to it. But we are going to go through a show tonight. We're going to do a lot of things. We're not really sure what we're going to do because you know what? It's the week of Thanksgiving, Steve. And I don't know about you, but Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday of the year. I know a lot of people tend to lean towards the Christmas season if you celebrate Christmas. A lot of people like, Halloween's a big one for a lot of people, I think.
I'm a big St. Patrick's Day fan myself.
St. Patrick's Day is a big one. Yep. Which I appreciate too. I mean, a lot of drinking involved with St. Patrick's Day usually, so that's good. I'm on board with that. But Thanksgiving combines literally everything that I love in this world. It's food, it's football, it's family, friends, all of the big F's. And then on top of that, you throw in beer or wine or whatever you drink.
Yeah.
And then for some people, I don't personally get to do this because I'm not really very good at it, but some people take naps. I mean, there's sleep involved. It's just literally there's everything you could possibly want in a day, all combined into Thanksgiving.
It's not that you're not good at it. It's that you have a small child that lives at your house, and so you're not allowed to do it. I understand what is going on there.
It's not that. I've actually never been able to nap. When I nap, I just lay down and lay there. It's like I can't fall asleep. I don't know why.
I think that's just called depression.
No. That's if I did it all the time.
I am a napper where if you can't give me 3 hours of solid sleep, don't let me nap for a half hour because I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be very mad at you. Well, and I'm not going to be able to control that. It's the worst of my personalities is being woken up from a nap earlier than like 2.5, 3 hours. That is the worst. That is when I'm at my worst.
For 3 hours is a long nap, dude.
It is. It's absolutely a terribly long nap, which is why I never do it.
And but nothing less than 3 hours will work for you.
If I get woken up, if I fall asleep and I get woken up an hour later in the middle of the day, I am an asshole to you and I cannot control it. Literally ask my wife, my child. I will spare no expense on anybody.
All right.
But I know that about myself, and that's what's important.
Well, it's good. It's good that you're self-aware. That's always a good quality for anyone who has any kind of deficiencies. And I would certainly call the need to nap for a 3-hour minimum a deficiency. So you may want to look into that going forward. As I mentioned, this show has multiple deficiencies tonight, but we are going to talk some football. Yes. I'm going to start off a little bit tonight. Like I said, we're going to be a little laid back. We're going to talk about some of the news. We're going to talk about some of the games from this past weekend, and then we might get into a little bit of projection for the upcoming games because of the holiday being on Thursday, which is only a couple of days away. Actually, probably tomorrow for most of you who will be listening to this. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you. We are not doing another show this week. We're taking the week off, and we're going to spend it with our families who are probably upset that we're doing so. But
yeah, I know my wife was quote unquote thrilled that I was only doing one show this week.
Yeah.
And I was going to be spending the holiday with her.
Yes. Yeah. It's nice. And, it's a good week to do that. There is a lot of football on Thursday that we obviously won't be able to cover anyway. So, it's good for us to take a little downtime this week. So that's what we're going to do. Let's start off with some news.
Okay.
This one cracks me up because I love seeing that this gentleman is still in the league. Mark Sanchez signed by the Washington football team this week to replace the injured and gruesomely injured Alex Smith. That was awful. It's terrible to watch. It was whenever you see an appendage flopping around like that, it's never a good sign.
Here's a question before we even get into the details of that. When you hear about an injury of this nature happening on Sunday, I was watching Red Zone when it happened, so I saw it.
Yep.
And so I was not able to not see it.
Yep.
But normally, when someone tells normally when someone tells you of an injury like this, there are some people that will seek out the video and want to see the injury.
I'm one of those.
I am not one of those. If I have not seen it and I didn't see it happen, I do not search it out. I avoid all videos. I've never seen the Kevin Ware Louisville college basketball injury of a few years ago. There are a few that I've just never seen, and I have no interest in seeing those.
Have you seen the Willis McGahee injury from Miami?
I was watching that game when that happened, so I did see that.
That one was rough.
That one was pretty bad. But yeah, I don't search those out. You seem like one of those that will go looking for the video. They want to see it with their own eyes.
I don't go looking. Well, I guess I go looking. Look, if someone tells me something like that, it's the car wreck thing, right? You can't help but I don't know. I will have to see the video. In some cases, I've been able to refrain, but for the most part, I will see it. But you're right, because I was watching Red Zone when that happened as well, and I obviously saw the injury, and you can't unsee it. It will be for that foot flopping around in different directions will never be erased from my brain. Yeah. So for those of you who haven't seen it, I do strongly suggest you take Steve's advice and don't go watch it. But Steve, beyond just seeing the ridiculously gross injury,
yes,
it's also very weird.
It was very weird. It was very weird. I know the big thing that happened as soon as it happened was that everyone brought up the fact that it was 33 years to the day that it happened to Joe Theismann, the Monday Night Football injury where he got tackled by Lawrence Taylor, broke his leg, basically ended his career there. 33 years to the day. Yes, they showed a lot of shots of him in the stadium. He was also there watching that happen to Alex Smith. Also very weird. But there were also some other very weird things that happened in that game.
Yeah, it just kept getting weirder.
Yeah. The fact that both of the injuries happened on the 40-yard line. In the same spot. On the field.
Of Washington. Washington's
40-yard line. Both
their own territory.
In Washington. In their own territory, both games. Yeah. Both games ended with a final score of 23-21.
Weird.
Very weird. Alex Smith and Joe Theismann that year both finished the season with 301 pass attempts.
Wow. That one I didn't hear yet. That's crazy.
Same exact pass attempts that they ended on the year. I also heard that Vernon Davis was active in both games.
Oh, yeah, I don't know that that's true. That part might be false.
That not confirmable, or you may confirm that one.
We have to check the records on that one a little bit, but the rest of that stuff is just plain weird, man.
Very odd that it just so much of it, history repeats itself. Absolutely. And we just saw that happen on Sunday.
All right. So we started this off by me talking about Sanchez. I obviously joke because I anytime I think of Mark Sanchez, I think of the butt fumble being a Patriots fan. I'm sure most people do, right?
6 years to the day on Thanksgiving.
Fantastic.
And he will be making his Redskins debut.
So here's my question, though. Will he make his debut, right? I mean, out of the gates, I doubt it either way. But going forward long term, I mean, I don't know that anyone's depending on Alex Smith at this point in their season. However, Colt McCoy came in and he was okay, but we've seen McCoy be okay before and he's just not really that great. He's not a guy you're going to run right out and get, right? But does Sanchez have any value going forward if you're in like a deep 2 quarterback league or you're really struggling to find someone to replace Alex Smith? Or would you lean more towards McCoy?
I don't know. At this point of the season, like you said, no one was really relying on Alex Smith as terms of a fantasy producer at quarterback, even in 2 quarterback leagues. He wasn't running the ball very often. They weren't throwing for a ton of yardage. He wasn't throwing for a bunch of touchdowns. And so, yeah, Colt McCoy came in. He did look decent. And I think you wait and see what he looks like this week on a short week. Mark Sanchez is not going to play. But this is starting to look like more and more an offense that you are going to totally want to avoid down the stretch to get into the fantasy playoffs and through the fantasy playoffs. Aside from Adrian Peterson, he's somebody that you might be able to rely on week to week, getting volume. They might lean on him a little more heavily, knowing that their quarterback situation might not be as strong. So I think outside of Adrian Peterson, you're going to be looking elsewhere. I don't know if, Jordan Reed got a touchdown. He looked a little better this week, but he's at a very slow season. So I don't know if you're relying on him at this point either, but he'd be the next person up that I'd look some more. Jordan Reed be the next guy. But
yeah, I think the offensive line is getting a little healthier. Trent Williams looks like he's going to be returning. I don't know if he played in this past weekend, but if he did not, he was almost ready to go. So he should be playing next week. So I do agree with you that Adrian Peterson's been really solid this year, and I think you can continue to roll him out. I think they're going to want to slow down the game, and Colt McCoy is a mobile guy who they might run some read, run play options and those kind of things, or read pass whatever you call them, the RPOs. But yeah, so Jordan Reed could be a guy, that may increase in value. He could be the same. He could have that same terrible season that he's been having all year. If you are looking for a quarterback to replace Alex Smith, it's possible you might look to a guy like Ryan Tannehill, who will be making his return to the field this week. Do you expect anything out of Tannehill going forward? We haven't really seen anything good out of his replacements, but that offense has just kind of sputtered all year. Is Tannehill a guy that you're throwing on your radar? Again, we're talking obviously deep 2 quarterback leagues at this point because no one's relying on these guys.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, not so much as Tannehill just finally coming back from the injury that he's missed so much time, but his wide receiver core has really been decimated from the time he's been out as well. Jakeem Grant has went on season-ending IR this week. Albert Wilson has been injured. He's gone for the year. They just don't have a huge wide receiver core to rely on. And so, I don't know who he'd be throwing to. I'm not really reliant on a Miami quarterback at this point in the season. There's been Brock Osweiler there for the majority of the year now. And so, no, I don't think so. I think that you have Kenyon Drake and Frank Gore, who you have to rely on or who you have to pick between each week, who you want to start between the two of them. And that's really it, because you got Kenny Stills up and down each and every week that he's been active. And then outside of that, you don't have anyone that you can really rely on that's healthy anymore. So kind of a wasteland there for fantasy purposes as well.
Meanwhile, Marcus Mariota leaves the game after only 3 points. Thank you very much, Marcus Mariota. That didn't hurt me at all this week.
Carson Wentz owners would be very thankful for those 3 points.
I suppose that's true. But Mariota leaves the game with what is now being called a stinger. Considering he had nerve damage in his hand earlier this year and couldn't grip a football or from an elbow injury. Now he's got a stinger. Could be, essentially feel the same way. They say that that's one of the reasons he didn't return. Hopeful for Monday Night Football, but again, it's a Monday night game, so you want to pay attention to that. Steve, are you done with Mariota for the year if you're in a league like, say a 16-team half-point PPR? May have been depending on him most of the season and kind of struggling.
It really depends on if your backup is Derek Carr, I guess, in that scenario that you just laid out right there.
I got some things I'm working on.
Yeah, all right. Ooh, interesting. Anywho, I'll tell you what I'm more upset with, that the Titans are on Monday Night Football at 3 weeks in a row. I don't know why that ended up happening, but I guess we all didn't see the Tennessee Titans sucking this bad on offense as they have been the last few weeks. But no, Marcus Mariota is also another quarterback, another guy that if you are in any type of fantasy relevant position, trying to get into the playoffs or in the playoffs, you probably have not been able to do that with Marcus Mariota as your quarterback. So I know I'm speaking like that, and Kevin right here is living proof that you can be in a fantasy relevant position with Marcus Mariota as your quarterback, but not everyone plays in 16-team leagues that are as heavily weighted and as nicely set up as Kevin's draft was. And no one gives him credit now, or everyone gives him credit now, but back in September, you got a lot of flack for that draft.
Yeah, and I don't know why. It was the plan going in. I knew that team. So for those of you who don't know, who haven't heard us talk about it before, I have drafted the trio of rookie running backs in Sonny Michel, Nick Chubb, and Ronald Jones. Obviously, Ronald Jones has not panned out. Kind of wish I had taken Kerryon instead of Ronald Jones. I think Kerryon went a little earlier, though, so I don't know that I had that opportunity. But I went with those 3 rookie running backs, knowing that I might struggle in the beginning of the season, but my hope was that they'd all take over starting roles by midseason. And given the importance of running back in that league, I'd have either some trade chips or some good keeper value going into next year, which I think I do, especially with Chubb and Michelle, considering I had Kamara from last year as a 5th round keeper as well. So my running back situation,
that ability to draft those late running backs, knowing you had a secure running back, someone that was going to have a lot of volume and a lot of play early on, you knew you could wait somewhere else or wait for someone to come on later on in the season.
If only I had nailed the quarterback position, I'd be in a much better place in the league. I should make the playoffs, but we'll see. And hopefully I'm set up to make a deep run. It would be nice if the Falafel Trophy stayed within the Falafel podcast.
Yeah, that would be nice. And I will also.
Speaking of which, how's your? Sorry to cut you off, but we should get to your weekly update on your team.
I was just going to try to bring that up before you could. I lost yet again. I was going up against somebody that they have a pretty good team. They've got Ezekiel Elliott and Michael Thomas on their team, but in true Falafel form, they also had to start Brandon LaFell and Jared Cook and Curtis Samuel this week, all of whom scored touchdowns and helped send me to yet another loss, my 6th loss in a row. And here I am treading water yet another week, still in 15th place. And but the easier part of my schedule is coming up. Gio, L-Dog, I'm coming for you guys. I'm looking for some wins. And this is where it starts to get, if I lose the next 2 weeks, I'm in some real trouble.
Yeah, that's not going to look good for you. Are you in dead last right now?
No, I'm in 15th. I just said that.
Oh, yeah, 15th. That's right. I'm sorry. I try not to listen.
I know. I get it. I understand.
Especially when it's as depressing. All right, let's just stick with quarterbacks really quickly, just to give some additional news. Sam Darnold apparently is week to week, but he has lost the walking boot. I don't know if anyone cares about that, but Jameis Winston back in the starting lineup after we all knew it was coming. It took longer than I think any of us expected, but Fitz Magic has become Fitz Pumpkin.
Yeah, yet again for the second time this season. But I think what is most notable about that is maybe not Jameis Winston taking over. That's good. That's good to know. I'm sure he's still on a lot of rosters because it wasn't too long ago that he was a starting quarterback. But the fact that OJ Howard has gone to IR with an ankle injury, he is out for the remainder of the season, which means you have a one Cameron Brate that you could pick up off your waiver wire. That might be a pretty nice little tight end streamer for the remainder of your season. He is someone that's going to probably take over the vast majority of the work there. And Jameis Winston does like Cameron Brate quite a bit. So
here's a real life question for you, Steve, regarding that very same issue.
Yes.
So 2 weeks ago, I am in a league where I started very slow and I'm battling to get into the playoffs. It is a 12-team, half-point PPR, quarter point per carry basic league, but 12-team league and on ESPN. And I had David Njoku as my tight end. I dropped David Njoku, who was obviously on his bye week, because I had some other roster issues that I had to contend with, and I picked up Ricky Seals-Jones to get through the week. Obviously, I figured since most people in that league don't really pay attention to tight end as much, and I figured I'd be able to get Njoku. I actually had planned to pick him up right before the Sunday games kicked off and just stash him back on my roster, but I wanted to make sure I got a tight end to play for that week earlier in the week. So that was my plan. It didn't work out because, of course, someone grabbed Njoku, stole him away from me. So now I have Ricky Seals-Jones on my roster. I do, however, have the number one waiver position. So the question is, Steve, we know how important that number one waiver position is sometimes.
Correct.
I'm pretty well set up with the rest of my roster. Is it worth going for Cameron Brate? Because he will get picked up. And I cannot go through the rest of the season with Ricky Seals-Jones.
No, you cannot. So if you are 100% set on your running back position, because I think this week, heading into week 12, I'm pretty sure the overall number one consensus waiver wire ad is going to be one Gus Edwards.
Yes, it is.
From
sadly.
Baltimore. So as long as your running back position is completely saturated, You've got starters.
Let's just talk it through. Let's talk it through. I have Melvin Gordon, obviously, there. I have Adrian Peterson, pretty solid. And I have Aaron Jones, also very solid. Okay. For backups, I have Kenyon Drake and Doug Martin. Now, in my mind, I had Devonta Freeman, by the way. He's on IR, obviously. So this team was very good until, but anyway. But so in my mind, I don't know that Gus Edwards, and we can get into Gus Edwards a little bit, who had a great game. Absolutely. I don't know that he's really that much of an improvement over Doug Martin, who's been relatively solid, and Kenyon Drake, who's been okay as well, because I don't know that he's going to get that many carries every game, particularly when Flacco comes back, if they put him back into the starting lineup.
They shouldn't. That's the biggest thing, is that we saw this one game anomaly from Baltimore with Lamar Jackson as the running back quarterback, getting 27 rushes.
Ridiculous.
And Gus Edwards supplanting Alex Collins and Buck Allen and everybody else that might have potentially had a chances at running back. And, Gus Edwards comes out of nowhere. So everyone's going to add him this week because everyone saw that what happened on Sunday. So he's going to be that number one pick. It's just, if you believe if that is what's going to continue to happen for Baltimore, or if you think that was a flash in the pan 1 week thing, I tend to lean on I don't know why they would put Flacco back in there. I really don't. And so at this point, if that's how their offense is going to run with Lamar Jackson under center, we've seen Baltimore use the hot hand at running back before. That's how Justin Forsett burst onto the scene. That's how Alex Collins burst on the scene last year. We've seen them lean heavily on, a burst running back like that just comes on at the scene. And so I think that he's worth the number one waiver wire position this week. There's not a lot out there at this point. But like you said, you have to go through your teams and your opposing teams and see who needs tight ends. And if no one else needs a tight end, then maybe you try and chance it. But if someone else out there is waiting and needs a tight end, and you have those running backs that you mentioned earlier, I don't see how you don't put in for Cameron Brate, because he's going to be the guy. He has no longer any competition there with him with OJ Howard. The Tampa Bay defense is awful. They have to throw tons and tons each and every game. That's a tough one right there. But
yeah, I'm leaning going Brate just because I really do think that, as much as I hate Cameron Brate and I'm a big OJ Howard guy, I think that he's going to get some volume. I mean, with Jameis coming back into the starting lineup, and I don't think that they can go away from him again, right? I don't think they could possibly do it again. So I
think
everything
that's on the line with his impending contract coming up, right? You can't not see everything he's got.
Right. So I think he's the guy going forward. So I think it's a perfect storm for me to get a tight end that I can use every week.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I need Gus Edwards enough. Like I said, I see what you mean. I mean, you make valid points on Gus Edwards, but for me, I still stick to the point that I don't know that he's going to get that kind of volume every week. I don't know that they're actually going to stick with Lamar Jackson. I really don't think they will. And the reason I say that is because, yeah, he got the job done, but it wasn't pretty. I mean,
and it was against the Bengals.
And it was against the Bengals. I mean, they had to do things that they don't really, I don't know that they want to do that. I don't know they want their quarterback running 27 times a game. I don't know that that's how they want to win the rest of the season when they're in a playoff fight. So I don't know. I don't know that I think they'll go back to Flacco with the idea that Lamar's the guy next year, not this year. So
do you think that with what we saw from Gus Edwards this week, which was really good, he looked really good. He looked better than Alex Collins. He looked like a really good running back this week. Do you think if Joe Flacco were to come back, that Gus Edwards would just go away? So regardless of the quarterback situation, where do you put Gus Edwards just by himself as the Baltimore Ravens running back?
I don't know that you can.
First of all, let's backtrack. Who the fuck is Gus Edwards?
yeah, right. I mean, that's the question I think most people are asking this week. So that's a very valid question. If I knew, I'd tell you. I don't. Yeah. I don't know much about him. I'm not a big college guy. He's way back past my college realm.
I was going to say, you're more of on this podcast between me and Sal and you are the most Devy heavy guy on here. And so this is just someone that completely slipped through. I'd never even heard his name before.
Yeah, he's not a guy that I've had on my radar at all. I don't know much about him, and I certainly, all I could tell you is he was what, an undrafted free agent. He went to Rutgers, and he looked good. I mean, he looked really good. I'll give him that. He's had 3 carries up until this past game for 22 yards.
So here's a question. If you're going to use your waiver ad on one running back this week, are you doing Josh Adams or Gus Edwards?
I think I might lean Josh Adams. And the reason I say that is because I think he's going to get more volume than Gus Edwards going forward. I think you can count on more volume because he's shown it now. I don't know that anyone else in the Philadelphia team has really shown that they can do that. They can handle that kind of load. And I think that he's been good. I mean, he looked really good this weekend, right? So
yeah,
I think I would probably lean towards Josh Adams. What would you do?
He looked as good as any Philadelphia Eagle looked this weekend.
Sure.
A very ugly outing from
he was like the lone bright spot for them, right?
Yeah, from the New England Patriot defeating Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles is how I believe they prefer their names being.
Yeah, they do like to say that a lot. I've noticed that.
Although their record's not quite as good as New England's. So.
No, they're not doing so great. They're 4-6 on the season right now, and so what did Josh Adams had? 7 carries, 53 yards, and a touchdown, plus 6 targets, 3 catches, and 19 yards. Not a lot of rushing attempts, but
no, but they were down big early, and they had to pretty much abandon that. So I think going forward, I think Josh Adams would be the safer play because we don't know, like we said, we don't know what Baltimore is going to do. They have Alex Collins there, who he didn't lose out because of injury. He scored a touchdown in that game very early on. I believe he scored the first touchdown in that game to put Baltimore up 7-0. So I think he's still got a very good chance to take some carries away. I would be going Josh Adams over Gus Edwards, but where I have high waiver claims this week, I am also going for Gus Edwards because I think that he is somebody that if he's got a shot at volume, you have to get him on your roster at this point of the season.
All right. Well, that was a much longer discussion than I expected. So the only another bit of news that I wanted to talk about, I think that we should probably mention that Kerryon Johnson looks like he's going to miss the Thursday game since that's coming up. That's pretty relevant for those of you who, man, this guy just cannot get it going. He's looked great when he's on the field and when they're using him properly, giving him the ball, feeding him, but he can't stay on the field. And when he does get on the field, even though he looks good, they just don't seem to want to give him the rock.
Yeah, it's been pretty frustrating. Although he's had some pretty nice weeks the last few weeks, save for one here or there. When he's gotten the volume, he's done a lot with it, and he's scored touchdowns. And so I think that the future is very bright for Kerryon Johnson. It'll be very interesting. I think let me ask you this, looking forward into the future, into the very, very far beyond next year in a redraft league, where do you think Kerryon Johnson is going in a fantasy draft for a redraft league? Knowing that he's going to be the starting running back for Detroit next year.
Do we know that?
I think so.
Do we know that Matt Patricia, who I assume is going to be back, do we know that he's not going to bring in, whether it's LeGarrette Blount again or another running back, do we know that he's not going to bring in a committee and use them regularly?
All right, well, saying that he doesn't, let's say that he doesn't do all that stupid nonsense. Kerryon Johnson is the number 1 running back for the Detroit Lions next year. Where is he being drafted?
I think he's probably a mid to late second round pick. If he's the guy.
Wow. That seems high.
Yeah?
I was thinking 3rd round, which I mean is not too much fun.
That's not that far off. We're about the same page here.
I guess I would feel more comfortable taking him in the 3rd round. If he was the 3rd piece of my team, I'd feel better as opposed to the 2nd piece. But I mean, that's where he's gone.
look what's going on with running backs right now. Running backs are the need, right? They're the chic pick, so to speak. You have to have running backs. So everyone's going running back. In fact, we've seen a lot of people this year go running back to start off their draft. If that's the case in a 12-team league, you're probably looking at 18 running backs going off in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah. Is he not one of the top 18 if you're expecting him to get a full workload and be the guy?
Yeah, I would say after, over the last 3 weeks, he's definitely been a top 18, at least a top 24, which you're looking for in, the first 2 rounds of your draft. You're looking for a top 2 running back at the very least.
So, yeah, I mean, I can easily see him in leagues, 12-team leagues going in the late, like I said, mid to late, and maybe someone's a bigger fan, because I think Kerryon has pockets of people that were very high on him coming out of college. Obviously, the Lions moved up to get him, and people put a lot of emphasis on draft stock. So there may be someone that reaches, a little bit, and mid second might be the earliest he goes. I could still see him being in that late second, though.
You play a lot of dynasty football. Do you ever do? I wonder what it would be like to draft in a redraft league with people that do, just full on dynasty all the time, and how much different that draft would be watching them draft someone that is so dynasty focused going through just a typical redraft league, and how different their drafts are, because it puts an entirely different spin on it. That is,
I've seen it. You see it a little bit with, I did a, not quite the same, but I did a salary cap league draft earlier this year that was auction based, right? And because it's salary cap, it's a little bit more. It's not quite redraft, obviously, but it's a little. You can't look at it from the lens of necessarily just a dynasty, because you have to factor in the contract values and the number of years, right? Mm-hmm. So because of that, we still saw people doing a lot of things where they were paying for long-term assets and giving them long-term contracts, not realizing that that's going to eat up your contract value for the full amount that it possibly can. So you're not going to have any flexibility with your team going forward. And that's sort of similar, but yeah, anyone with a dynasty mindset, when you get them into a redraft league, you're going to see some odd picks. There's no question about it. But you know what? They're going to be right, because you got guys like Traquan that only a dynasty mind would take in a redraft league, right? You wouldn't. No one, unless you're a really deep league, I doubt too many people were taking Traquan Smith, right?
Yeah, and just like you did in Falafel, drafting someone like Sony Michel or Nick Chubb, knowing that they're not going to be factors for the beginning of the season. Anyone that drafted David Johnson his rookie year, knowing that he's not going to be a factor, he's not going to be that guy for the first 5, 6, or 7 weeks. But fantasy is a 16-week league. There's a lot of time after that, and there's a lot that can happen down that stretch. It's crazy how different they are, yet how much they can help each other.
Yep, absolutely. All right, one more bit of news, and it's kind of a sad bit of news, but Michael Gallup is another guy that plays on Thursday. Obviously, if you have a guy like Michael Gallup, obviously more of a dynasty focus for a guy like that, but really a sad news that it seems like his brother took his own life, and he's going to be away to deal with the family situation. You never want to hear anything like that. Obviously, we play this game and we play it for fun, and when you hear terrible things happening to people like that, it's just it sucks all around. So, not that he's listening, but he might. Best wishes to Michael Gallup's family, and hope that they can get through this tough time. But I don't know what else to say there. It's tough.
Yeah, that's tough. And just if you're feeling that yourself, or if somebody that's feeling out, just always encourage them to reach out for help, because there's help that's out there. And there are, as much as it might not seem, there are people that care, and that people that will help. And just talking to somebody can do a lot for someone's, own well-being. So yeah, very, very tough story there.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. As sad as it is, one of the things that, what's that?
One more news bit.
All right.
Mitchell Trubisky is not a lock to start on Thursday. He's suffered a shoulder injury. He's not. His head coach is saying that he is hopeful, but does not know he cannot say for certain that he's going to start. What do you think happens to the Bears if Trubisky is not able to go on Thursday against the Lions?
They probably still win.
Because Khalil Mack.
Yeah, because Khalil Mack. Really, honestly, I'm not. That's not even a joke. That's true because Khalil Mack and because that defense is really good. I don't know that. I don't know that Detroit, whose offense has looked rough the last few games. I don't know that they're really going to be able to score that many points against that defense because it's just been so lights out lately. Who's Chicago's backup right now? I don't even know who their backup is. Do you know?
Chase Daniels?
Is that it?
Is it still Chase Daniels? I'm pretty sure.
Talk amongst yourself for a second while I pull that information up.
All right. I'm trying to look it up. So this is great podcast.
It sucks because normally when I say talk amongst yourselves, there's Sal here to at least.
Mike Clay, I believe it was, posted some of the most sacked or hurried or pressured.
Castle.
Or Mike Clay. Matt Castle? No.
Is that right? That can't be right. Is it Matt Castle?
I don't know. It might be.
I think it's Matt Castle.
I'm trying to talk about other stats here.
Sorry. Go on.
Mike Clay posted the least pressured quarterbacks over the last 4 or 5 weeks. And tops on the list was Andrew Luck with only 3 over the last 4 weeks.
That offensive line is phenomenal.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. Le'Veon Bell is going to work so hard next year.
Oh, man, I hope so.
But on the bottom of that list was Matthew Stafford, who's been sacked quite frequently over the last few weeks. Yeah. And now is going to have to face this Bears defense over under 2.5 sacks for Khalil Mack on Thursday.
Under. I'm going to say under because he's going to be double teamed and someone else will get sacks. Stafford probably gets sacked 7 times, but it's not all going to be Khalil Mack. So, it's sad too because the Lions have put a lot of capital into that offensive line too, and they are just not playing well at all.
Yeah, are they very injured? Are they?
I don't know what the deal is. It's really hard to tell. I don't think that they're injured. I don't know that they're necessarily guys that are out. I'm looking at their injury report right now, and TJ Lang on IR. So that hurts because he is their. I think he was their starting left guard. So that definitely hurts. But he's the only one of that starting offensive line that's out, and they have 3 high round picks, I believe, right in the offensive line there. So that's tough. Hopefully they can get it together. Otherwise, Chicago is going to have a lot of fun rushing the passer this week. You know what else is fun, Steve?
What?
Watching football.
Agreed.
It is more entertaining though when you have some action on the games. You've heard us talking about this for weeks. And some of you are still on the sidelines. Whether you're an expert or a rookie, you should be betting at MyBookie. If you're the kind of guy that likes to bet a little and win a lot, and Steve, I know you are that type.
Yes.
Like playing the numbers on roulette, you can create a big parlay. Pick 3 teams to win, and if you hit all 3, you could turn what into what, Steve? Do you remember?
$100 into 600 smackaroos.
That is correct. $600 off of $100. There's so much to bet on. You can bet on college basketball and football, the NBA, NHL, custom props, even esports, you name it, Steve. We talked about the fact that you can even bet on fantasy players' scores. It's phenomenal.
Yes.
MyBookie is the one bet I know you'll be happy with all year. We recommend these guys because we really trust them. MyBookie has been in business for years. They've got great online reviews, and their mobile site is easy to use. Sign up this week, and MyBookie will give you a 50% deposit bonus to jumpstart your bankroll. It's a great way to bank even more money when you win. Also, make sure to follow @BetMyBookie on Twitter. They personally respond to every mention and DM, not to mention that they've given away more than $10,000 in free money to their followers this football season. You'll be the first to know as soon as the new odds and props are posted. Don't miss out on one of the best weeks to bet on sports this year. Log on to MyBookie right now and use promo code FFL and get 50% deposit bonus. That's promo code FFL. You play, you win, you get paid. You know what I want to know though, Steve?
What?
Out of all of the people that follow MyBookie on Twitter,
yes,
and all of the $10,000 that they've given away, why Sal? How does Sal get picked?
I don't know.
It feels like he should be last on that list.
He probably should.
It truly shows you that they're doing it randomly and anyone can win.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Because no one would willingly pick Sal to win
for anything.
No, absolutely not. It must be the horse head factor.
There it is. All right, we got about 20 minutes left in this podcast before you go back to the baby nightmare that is your life.
Correct.
And so you want to talk about some projections since we are not doing a podcast later this week?
Yes, indeed. But real quick, the Thursday Turkey Day Thanksgiving slate. Great slate. Bears, Lions, Cowboys, Washington, Saints, Falcons to end the night. That's going to be fun.
So here's the question, right? Because Thursdays are always hit or miss, and Thanksgivings have been, I think they've been hit or miss the last couple of years as well, right? A good game and then a couple of bad ones, or a couple of good games and then a bad one, those kind of things. There's no way all three are going to be good.
No, they're not all going to be good.
So which one of these is the blowout?
I think just looking at it, you'd automatically say Saints Falcons, right? Because you know how good the Saints are. Just because you know how good the Saints are. The other ones, I don't see offenses matched up with just absolutely atrocious defenses where a blowout is just in the cards. The Saints can blow out anybody. And so they can blow out the Falcons. The Falcons have shown to, they can disappear from time to time. So I would say that would be the most, I think, just looking at it. But I could also see the Bears putting it on the Lions would be my next one.
Wow, interestingly, and I would go completely the other way and say that Dallas over Washington only because
Colt McCoy
or Mark Sanchez are your quarterback options there. I mean, look, I know that Washington's defense been pretty decent this year, and Dallas has been terrible on offense, but they have been getting better the last couple of weeks, and their defense has played well. So I can see that one being a tough day for Washington. So
I don't know. Dallas losing at home on Thanksgiving to Colt McCoy seems so Thanksgiving.
It does seem. It just feels right, doesn't it? Sorry, Kareem.
He's going to kill me before the end of the season.
And here's the thing, though, right? Because I think that the Falcons, I'm with you. The Saints look like they could absolutely destroy anyone. But one, they're bound for a dud, right? It's going to happen. It will happen. It'll probably happen in the fantasy playoffs, and I'll get no points from Kamara, and I'll get bounced from the playoffs in falafel. But it's going to happen at some point, right? And this is division. That division, the NFC South, always plays each other very, very tightly. Those games are usually good. I can see that being a close game. But let's talk about that game a little bit. We're going to talk projections. So why don't we talk about some projections from that game? Alvin Kamara, obviously we're talking ESPN. This is the Falafel League scoring. These are projections from ESPN. Alvin Kamara is the projected number one running back at 21.5, Steve. So it sounds like ESPN is on board with your thoughts that the Saints can blow out anyone. Is that it? Is Kamara, should he be the number one?
I mean, with Todd Gurley on a bye week this week, I don't really see why not. You got Ezekiel Elliott, who's another candidate for that spot. He's going up a Redskins defense that is typically a little tougher against the run. So yeah, I think that Kamara being the number one ranked running back this week is absolutely very feasible. We've talked all season long about how awful the Falcons are against running backs, but not only just running backs, but pass catching running backs. And that is exactly what Kamara is. So I think that he is set up to have a huge game this week. I have no problem with him being the number one running back projected for week 12. I think he can easily cover that.
New Orleans Saints have been surprisingly good against the running backs this year. They're fifth best, I think, in the league against opposing running backs. Tevin Coleman only projected to get 12.1. We've seen Coleman have some good games. We've seen Coleman have some bad games. Do you think this is a bad game for Coleman?
I mean, if you're just going up and down with what he's done, I think he's probably in line for a rougher game. I think this game sets up a little bit for the Falcons to be playing from behind, as you would look at it, going into it. So I don't think that it necessarily projects to be a run-heavy game for Atlanta. I probably would put him right around that 12-point mark, but I would go a little bit under. I think that he's had a very solid stretch for the last 2 weeks, I think, and so I think he's due for a little bit of a dud. I think that I don't think that they'll necessarily use him as heavily this week. I think that they will have to play from behind and have to throw the ball quite often.
Conversely, the New Orleans Saints are, for lack of a better word, absolutely dreadful against opposing wide receivers.
All right.
Are giving up almost 3 points per game on a half-point PPR basis, more than the Philadelphia Eagles, who are the second worst. And Julio Jones comes into this one. He's pretty good, Steve. I don't know if you've noticed.
And he's scoring touchdowns again, which is very happy.
3 touchdowns in the last 3 weeks. Does he stick with it? They have him projected at 18.5 here, which is below the last 3 matchups that he's had where he's gotten that touchdown. Do you think he continues to roll?
Man, 18 points in a half-point PPR is, basically projecting that he scores a touchdown. Although earlier in the season, he was putting up those types of point totals without scoring the touchdowns. I don't know if he gets in the end zone this week. I think that they're going to put a pretty heavy emphasis on him. I think Calvin Ridley is primed for a pretty big bounce back week after having a few lower scoring weeks heading into this matchup. So I will put Julio Jones slightly below that 18-point projection. Can you tell me what Calvin Ridley is projected for? Because I will take the over.
Ridley is right now projected at 9.1. You got to be a little careful with him. He is questionable in this one. I don't think it's an injury that's going to keep him out, but you want to keep your eye on him. I would tend to agree with you that I think this is a good game for him for a bounce back. He was responsible for that interception last week. That did not look good. And he's had a rough couple of games with only 5.5 and 5.2 in the last 2 games. So I could see him having a bounce back against this defense. I think you're right. They will probably key in on Julio Jones. I don't think they have to worry about the running backs in Atlanta too much. So this could be a good – it's either going to be – the problem is it's either him or Sanu, right? One of them is going to have a great day. Yep. I don't know which one.
Me neither. But I'll say Ridley.
All right. Michael Thomas is at the 3rd spot, a full 1.5 behind Julio Jones at 17. Does he keep rolling along?
I don't know how you bet against him. I don't know how you bet against the volume that he gets. You don't bet against his quarterback who's throwing the ball, who's throwing 4 touchdowns in an absolute blowout against the Eagles over, in their Week 11 victory. They are rolling. And Drew Brees is playing at MVP pace right now. He's getting a lot of hype for that. I think they're going to push for him to get that MVP. And for them to do that, he's going to keep throwing the ball. So, yeah, absolutely. I will take Michael Thomas in the over. I think he has a huge night against Atlanta.
Traquan Smith did miss practice today with a foot injury.
Brandon Marshall, fire him up.
You want to keep an eye on that. Yes, Brandon Marshall. Kirkwood, another guy to keep an eye on. He had a good game last week. So, all right, Steve, what else do you want to talk about? Any games that what are the games this weekend that you are intrigued by from a fantasy perspective? So we can talk about a few, we'll talk about some projections from those games. What's your game on the Sunday slate that you really want to see?
The old Sunday slate, a game a few years ago might have been very, very intriguing. This year, maybe not so much, but I think still has the potential to cause a little bit of a problem. And that is going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers traveling to Denver to face the wild card potential Denver Broncos, who I have to laugh at because they're only potentially wild card teams mathematically. I hope to God they don't make the wild card, and I wish they would stop winning games. But I think that this game has the potential to be a little bit of a stickler for maybe offensive or fantasy players on both sides of the ball, because going to Denver, not the easiest thing in the world, and for Denver, you got Emmanuel Sanders, you got Phillip Lindsay, kind of their only real fantasy assets going forward, and they're playing a little bit of a stiffer defense. So that's a game that I'm looking forward to seeing this weekend, and not just because I'm a Broncos fan, because I'm going to lose.
Let's start at the quarterback position there, because obviously we saw Road Ben last week, but we did see him at least somewhat redeem himself. Ends up with 20 points somehow because he throws 2 touchdowns and runs 1 in after throwing 3 interceptions. He was negative points through the majority of that game.
Yeah, bad.
On the road at Denver this time. So Road Ben again, it's one you got to worry about. He's projected to get 19.4 points in this one, and I'm nervous about that number.
Yeah, that seems high. Seeing him get 20 in Jacksonville, like you said, he had to run a touchdown in to get that 20 points. He's not going to have a rushing touchdown this week. I guarantee it. So that's not on the table. And Denver is a tough place to play, and their defense is not terrible. It's not great. It's not what it was, when Peyton was playing or a few years ago, but it's also not terrible. I think that this game is going to be a little lower scoring than people might necessarily think. I don't know exactly what the total is right now on this one, but I think that this is going to be a little bit lower scoring game. I think James Conner will probably have a better game than he did last week. He had a little bit of a dud there, but I think that this is one that the scoring will be down all around. And I think all players will take a little bit of a hit in this one.
All right. I like that game. That's a good one. That'll be one that I'm interested to see at 4:00. The 1:00 games, I'm curious. I know it's not going to be a very interesting game, but the New England Patriots and the Jets are always fun because it's the Jets.
How fitting we both just pick the games that have our teams.
Well, you know what? Though, honestly, with the Patriots, there's so much with that offense that I need to see getting going, because I think a lot of us, from a fantasy perspective, are depending on some Patriots going forward. Some people have, whether it's Tom Brady or Sony Michel or Rob Gronkowski, who should be returning in this game. I think you really need to see that offense start to gel a little bit for fantasy value. So I think that's one that's interesting only for that purpose, right? I don't think there's anything else that you really need to worry about in that game. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, with putting Jameis back in the lineup like we talked about, I want to see how that impacts Cameron Brate and Mike Evans and all those guys. So I'm curious about that one there. That'll be an interesting game. And that's kind of it, man. There's not a lot of games that are the Panthers and the Seahawks is usually a good battle.
Yes.
6-4 Panthers really need a win. 5-5 Seahawks also playing for their lives. Both, in the hunt as far as the wild card is concerned. But
I mean, was this not? I mean, it might not be back to back, but this was NFC Championship games. At least one of the 2 years that Denver went in their back-to-back Super Bowl years. Yes. These were teams that are just a few years removed from being, that type of team. I know that the Seahawks have fallen off a little bit on defense and a little bit on offense as well as what they have there. But yeah, absolutely. That's a huge game against two teams that are fighting for their playoff lives.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's look at it from the Seattle's perspective at running back, because I'm curious, are there any running backs in Seattle that you are considering starting in this one? Chris Carson, I believe, is the highest projected at 11.3.
J.D. McKissick is active.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sal should be thrilled, right? He's a big McKissick guy.
I think with having the extra time off, Seattle was on the Thursday night game against Green Bay in Week 11. They've had a few extra days off with Chris Carson being the main guy in that week. I think he's had a little extra time. I think he is the guy that you rely on most heavily. Rashad Penny and Mike Davis, they kind of go back into that RB2 range, and you can't really rely on them at all. So I think I'm rolling Chris Carson out there. I'm not necessarily feeling super confident about that going up against the Panthers defense, but he is the guy that is going to see the most volume and have the most opportunity. So I think that 11 points, I'd probably give him the over on that. I see him getting into the end zone and getting a good dose of yardage there. So yeah, I like Chris Carson next week.
And just this one will make you happy. And I'd like to end the show with you in a good mood before you go off to what I am calling baby hell.
Yes.
Breaking news here that AJ Green has a quote unquote good chance to play this weekend in Week 12. So what does that do for you, Steve?
I mean, if you are a fantasy football team that is fighting on the fringe of making the playoffs and you get AJ Green back in Week 12 against the Browns, I think that you're pretty happy about that. I'd be happy about that. I only have AJ Green in one spot in a dynasty league. I traded him away in my other dynasty league that I had him. But I'm a big AJ Green fan. When he's on the field, he gets a ton of volume from Andy Dalton going up against the Browns. Probably end up being a high-scoring game because the Bengals defense is absolutely garbage. And so, yeah, getting AJ Green back, very good, very good. I want to ask you, though, Kevin, a game that might seem a little off kilter here. The Jacksonville Jaguars going north to Buffalo to face the Josh Allen-led Bills, who is on pace to start again this week. We already saw the Bills dismantle the Minnesota Vikings in Buffalo earlier. Oh, wait, no, that was in Minnesota, right?
No, I believe it was in Buffalo.
Okay.
I think.
Okay. Well, we saw them beat the Minnesota Vikings, wherever that was, earlier in the season. Do you think these Bills...
It was in Minnesota. You were correct.
I'm calling it right now. They're going to beat Jacksonville.
I agree with you because I think that this Jacksonville team is absolutely done. I think they hate each other. I think we talked about this before. There's fighting. Did you see Jalen Ramsey's, for one, they're in Jacksonville, Florida. It was, I don't know how warm it was, but everyone else was in shorts and t-shirts and he had a face mask on. Like a full on, the winter face masks for skiing. Yeah. He had one of those on. I can't figure out why, except for the fact that maybe he was just pissed off at the world. They do not like each other. That team is done.
And the reports came out before the games on Sunday that they might potentially be looking to trade Jalen Ramsey after the end of the season. And I don't blame him. I love Jalen Ramsey coming out. He was a stud. He still is a stud. He's a good player. But I do not like when players run their mouths when things are going good and then clam up and won't say a word when stuff starts to go south. That is just, it shows so much about their character, and I lose so much respect for people that do that. I'm all about people running their mouth when things are going good. I don't even care if you run your mouth when things are going bad. That's funny to me as well. But don't just clam up and not answer questions from the media when things are going bad, or say, I don't know what's going on with the team. I don't know, blah, 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 blah. He just is acting like a complete baby, and I've lost a lot of respect for him this season. So I would not blame them for trading him away either.
Meanwhile, Blake Bortles, who threw for 104 yards last week, goes up against, surprisingly, the number one ranked defense against fantasy quarterbacks this year in the Buffalo Bills.
Which has got to only be because teams don't have to throw on them all game, right?
I mean, it certainly doesn't help.
That has to be the only explanation.
But their defense has played better than I think people expected across the board. It hasn't been awful, right? It's not, it's not a terrible defense. They're not giving up a ton of points. They just can't score points either. So it should be, that is an interesting one. I am with you 100%. I think the Bills beat him. I think that team in Jacksonville is absolutely done. So we will wrap it up there. Steve, why don't you tell everyone where they can find us, except for finding Sal. We all know that you can find him on fanball.com.
Oh, of course. Well, you can find us, the Fantasy Football Funhouse, at fffunhouse.com on Twitter. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram. You can just search for Fantasy Football Funhouse there. And then, of course, you could go to fantasyfootballfunhouse.com, where you can find all of these podcasts and any podcasts that you may have missed before this episode, which might not be very relevant during this fantasy football season. And I would like to wish everybody listening to this a happy Thanksgiving, and be sure to cherish your family this weekend and for the rest of your life.
Agreed. Happy Thanksgiving to all those who are listening. And, as we enter the season of giving and the season of thanks. And I just want to remind everyone to get out there and do some good with your fantasy football playing experience, to donate to charity. We saw some of the Fantasy Cares stuff. John Bosch went out and bought all the toys for Tots for, a portion of the money that was raised by Fantasy Cares. And it's just great to see how much of an impact you can actually have in people's lives by playing fantasy sports. So check out fantasycares.net next year when they start to reopen all those things. Go out there and donate some time, donate some money, donate some clothes, get your league together to do a clothing drive, whatever it is that you can do something nice for someone else, especially during this time of year. And that's it. We'll be back next week after the holidays when we're all fat and happy. And until then, see ya.